When you think of the great superpowers of the 15th century, you probably picture European ships, right? Little caravels setting off to explore the world. But what if I told you that way before them, another power was launching fleets and building armies that would absolutely dwarf anything else on the planet? Today, we're getting into the incredible and honestly often overlooked power of China's Ming Dynasty. Okay, let's just jump right into the scale of this because these numbers are wild. On the left, you've got Columbus's famous flagship. On the right, that's Admiral Zheng He's treasure ship, and it was sailing almost 100 years earlier. We're talking about a ship that's more than 4 times longer with a crew 25 times bigger. This wasn't just a bigger boat. It was basically a floating city. It completely changes the picture of who the real global force was back then. And believe it or not, that giant ship was just the start. The first part of our story is all about this unbelievable maritime project, an era that was truly defined by a fleet of giants. So between 1405 and 1433, the Ming Emperor funded 7 of these massive expeditions. And listen, these weren't just a few ships on a scouting trip. No way. We're talking huge fleets, sometimes with hundreds of ships, that sailed all the way across the Indian Ocean to the coast of East Africa. They were charting the world and flexing Chinese power everywhere they went. And it wasn't just about building bigger ships, it was about building smarter ones. Just making one of these was a massive industrial project. They had to get and prepare insane amounts of timber. And check this out. They built the hulls with watertight compartments. It was an advanced design that made the ships super durable and really hard to sink. And to find their way, they were using sophisticated magnetic compasses and star charts to cross these huge open oceans. Just incredible stuff. So why do all this? What was the point? Well, these voyages were a really clever mix of geopolitics and strategy. It was about showing off the power and wealth of the Ming Dynasty, for sure. It was also about controlling valuable trade routes and, of course, gathering intel on other countries. But it was also a brilliant political move for the Yongle Emperor himself. He'd actually seized the throne, so he used these huge, impressive expeditions to prove he was the legitimate and powerful ruler.
But here's where the story gets even crazier. The Ming weren't just masters of the sea. At the exact same time, they were sparking a revolution in land warfare, all thanks to gunpowder.
Now, this gunpowder revolution didn't just happen overnight. It was an innovation that had been brewing for centuries. You can see the evolution right here. It starts with these early, kind of crude fire lances. Think of them like proto-flamethrowers. Then you get to portable hand cannons. And then, during the Ming era, things really take off with the widespread use of the matchlock musket and the creation of massive artillery pieces that could just pulverize fortress walls. The matchlock really was the game changer. That simple mechanism, where a burning cord lights the powder, made firearms so much more reliable, more controlled, and way more accurate. This wasn't just a new gun, it was a whole new way of fighting, and the Ming army adopted it on a huge scale. And they didn't just have these new weapons. They figured out really smart ways to use them. They created formations with musketeers and archers working together. They drilled their troops in volley fire to create this terrifying wall of lead. They even had elite, specialized firearm units with awesome names like the Shenji Ying or Thunderclap Army. And, of course, they put cannons on their warships, giving their navy a huge leg up. So this brings us to the big question, right? You've got a navy that's the best in the world, and you're leading a revolution in military tech on land. With all that power, why didn't the Ming Dynasty just go on to rule the world? The answer is where their story takes a fascinating and unexpected turn. Because what happened next was a massive shift. The dynasty's entire focus began to change, and it started this great inward turn that would totally alter its destiny. And you can see that shift so clearly right here. In the early days, it was all about looking outward. It was about sea power, projecting authority, and bringing in wealth through trade. But fast forward to the 1500s, and the script had completely flipped. The main priority was now land-based defense, specifically locking down the northern border. The whole economic engine turned inward, focused on farming and stability at home. So, what happened? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of problems. First, constant raids from Mongol tribes in the north became the #1 threat, so tons of money and manpower had to be redirected to the army and the Great Wall. Then you have the cost. Let's be real. Maintaining that giant fleet and developing all those new weapons was incredibly expensive. And on top of all that, you had politics.
Bureaucratic infighting and a big ideological shift that started to favor farming over trade meant that the political will to fund those grand global adventures, it just vanished. And so we're left with this powerful, incredible legacy. One that's full of amazing achievements, but also that huge, lingering question of what if. Just take a moment to let that sink in. At the exact same time in history, a single dynasty had both the world's most powerful navy and was leading a full-blown revolution in gunpowder warfare. That is an almost unbelievable concentration of power. And this leaves us with one last really provocative thought. The Ming story shows us that having the best technology, being the most innovative, it's not enough. It's not the whole picture. What happens when a superpower, for a whole bunch of complicated reasons, simply loses its ambition? It's a heavy question that echoes all the way from the 15th century right into our world today.